Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today I want to talk about the reason that I've been filming so many model builds and why those are a prominent part of the channel. It really goes back to when I built the Curse Blood, which I've done a version of on this channel, and I struggled with it so much that I contacted Games Workshop. I looked everywhere online for additional advice on the one specific part, and I just couldn't find it, and I couldn't figure it out on my own. It took 3 days, but I did eventually get it to work. And once I did, I can't say that it was like, aha. I didn't have like a, oh, that is intuitive, I just didn't get it moment. It was actually just straight weird. And I wrote some instructions and took pictures and sent them to a friend because he was just about to build the model too. But I realized I should probably have gone a little bit further. And I didn't actually do that until I got the commemorative Sister of Battle model, Aveline, which I have a short video about her legs, because the way the instructions read just made it a little bit more confusing than it needed to be. And it was a lot easier if you did the next part of the instructions first and then put the legs on, and it worked. And when I made that video, I realized there was a place that we could put a library of these builds. And if someone did run into some trouble, they'd be able to hop out and find a video for it. Or if not, they could at least ask. And if I had that model, I could build it. Or if I could find it for a reasonable price, I could grab it and do it. And just basically create a place for people to have some help when they encounter trouble building a model. Because while many of them are pretty darn straightforward, and I do have some very low-level difficulty ones on the site so far, there are plenty that I would have been thrilled to find a video and get some assistance to make that just an easier process all around. So with that in mind, when I went at this process and I decided that I was going to do it, I didn't really have a plan at the very beginning. I just started filming them. I used my iPhone to do it. I had some technical challenges, primarily with focus. The autofocus was crazy. And ultimately, some of these take quite a while. Even when they're not big, they can take an hour to build. And so I wanted to speed them up. And there isn't really much to say about some of these. It's easier just to watch. This is a visual learning tool, YouTube and videos. So yammering over it the whole time might get a little frustrating, especially if you're trying to focus in on one part and you're like, I just want to see how that fits. And you have to listen to the person, in this case me, yammering about some random nonsense, whether it's a story that has nothing to do with the model or that specific part over and over again. It's just annoying. So that's why I decided to do the music over the sped up versions, because if you really needed to, you could just slow it down. You can use the YouTube tools to cut it in half. You can pause. You can move frame by frame. I just think it's really easy to get what you need out of those. Now, the second thing about it is that I figured that I could also put any details at the end with when I do my reveal and they are on the little platter. I can talk about anything that was specifically challenging, and then I put it now in the description under the difficulty, which I only recently made up, but I thought that it was very useful so that someone could be like, hey, I'm really thinking about getting, some Stormcast Eternal models. They find my video and they look down and they go, wow, that's a difficulty 6. What's going on? And then I can explain, and they say, oh, well, you know what? I'm actually really good at hunting sprues, so that's not going to be as big of a challenge as it was for him. So I could still buy this and not really suffer. Whereas if they see maybe it's a Sylvaneth model, which is very spindly, and they're like, well, I have a hard time when I did Necrons, and they sound a lot like the Necrons, so maybe I need to get a little better and do something else first. So that's sort of my thinking behind the difficulty. Now, as far as what those ratings mean, I have written it down, but just to specify, I rated on 1 to 10, and I did decide that I would do it in increments like 1.25, 1.75, and that sort of thing. But the ratings basically mean that if it's a 1, it is so darn simple that literally anyone can do it. This is like, I have just opened my first package. I've never built anything before. Give me the glue. I'm ready to go. That's how easy it is. As we go up, once we get up past round 4, that's when it starts to get beyond a beginner. significantly beyond a beginner, because that's when we're starting to talk about the model doesn't look even remotely humanoid, so it's really hard to tell what part goes to what. It becomes sort of a puzzle, like one of those big jigsaw puzzles that has huge patches of just one color, and the sprues are just massive, like a Necromunda sprue. I mean, those get pretty ridiculous. Or they're really small, or just any number of factors can go into increasing the difficulty. Whether you have to hunt through the sprues to find your specific parts, or you've got to find a specific piece that is so small that you can barely hold it. Anything like that will increase the difficulty. Now, I do have some that exceed 8. The Curse Blood, because of the instructions alone, got up that high. It would have been better if they would have shown us a different angle. Quite honestly, if they would have, instead of showing it from the side, if they would have turned it on its back and showed where that part went, I don't think it would have been as hard. But because of how they did it, it increased the difficulty and it made it very, very, very challenging. And therefore, that's why when I did the video, I showed it in many angles so that you could really see what's going on with that model. I would put some of the bigger models at a much higher difficulty as well, because there's just so many parts to them that you have to keep track of, and some of them are massive and some of them are small and some of them are decorative. You know, like I was building a TV stand recently, and we missed a whole part because the instructions were a little confusing. Fortunately, we were able to go back and put it on, and there was not really much more lost than time. But with a model, there are occasions where if you miss a part, then it might have gone under something to provide some structural integrity, and it would be very difficult to go back. I have a fantastic video where I made a very big mistake building a Space Marine drop pod, and when I was putting the doors on, one of the pegs didn't get where it belonged. This is supposed to not be glued so that it can open and close. And because I missed that part, I had to do all kinds of nonsense to get it back in there, because by the time I caught it, it had been like 30 minutes. The glue had well and truly set. I had to practically break it to get it in there. Now, I did succeed, and I didn't have to ruin that door, but it was pretty frustrating. So that's why I would elevate the difficulty on more complex models. Even if they're fairly simple, it's just that they're more time consuming and they're just so big and there's so much going on that it can actually take you more time. But anyway, long story short, way too late. The idea behind me doing model build videos is to provide a resource for people to get some help if they need it. If they're building a model and they're frustrated, if they can't find the help online through maybe a Warhammer community or their own site, maybe I've got the video, or maybe I can offer some advice if I can see a picture or something. I just wanted to be a resource and assist people as much as possible, especially if I find a model that is particularly challenging. I definitely want to get that out there. So, are there any models that you guys have built that are just really tough? Do you have any kind of tips or advice for people on what they should do if they encounter something like that? Do you find any of this useful? Do you like it? Is there something you'd like to see different? Let me know in a comment below and we'll talk about it. Anyway, this is Robert from Society Case Files signing off.